Good evening, everybody. This is Brian Elliott. I am the president of the SJSU Special Libraries group, student group, and we are pleased tonight to have with us Stephen Abram, a well-written, extremely experienced librarian and thinker. And as I said, we are extremely lucky to have him tonight with us. And I'm just going to hand it right off to Stephen so we can get started.
Thanks for the kind introduction, Brian. Hopefully everyone can hear me. They asked me to talk about personal influence, and I did one of these sessions a couple of months ago, and some people found it interesting because they tend to think in library land that marketing and public relations and sending out emails and memos is enough, when it really comes down to personal influence. And so I'm going to talk about some of the structures of personal influence and some of the things we need to do to differentiate ourselves in our organizations, where in the special library space in particular, we're one of the minority professions when we're working in a law firm or an engineering firm or a hospital. And we have to break through the noise of another profession and position ourselves specifically. And so I'm going to talk about how to manage impressions, your online identity, and what it means when you're working through an intranet or working through the web or talking to people through social media and email and stuff like that. Oh, excuse me, I've got a cough, and it's just, if winter doesn't end soon in this part of the world, I'm going to scream. And so how you build reputation capital and how you manage your reputation when personal influence and personal positioning is so much more important than the positioning of the traditional thinking about libraries, information, books, and databases. And so I just put out this because it's not very readable, but it talks about becoming a person of influence. And when you look at things like listening and questions, which are in the roots, under overcoming barriers and talking, they're really, and rapport is the one that's the most important in my mind. And it's also shown by the research to be really important. You look at them, they say, gee, that's sort of core skill base for librarians. You know, the way we do reference interviews, the way we don't take the first question. We know in our world, and we're taught this in old-fashioned reference interviewing skills, that you never accept the first question. You dig deeper, you find out the purpose, you find out the psychology behind it, you find out the context. And that requires a lot of questions, open-ended and closed, a lot of listening skills, and a lot of insight. And that requires us to build a relationship that is significantly different than just good and effective customer service, or what I call step and fetch it librarianship. Get me this article, get me this book, do this ILL, do this database search for me. The core of librarianship is really underpinning the transformation of knowledge, and part of our skills is in the improvement of the quality of questions, not in taking the question as it appears. Now, most people in the professional space don't want to admit they don't know something, especially in the special library space. So they come to us and our questions present as a request for service rather than the real question, the real need, the real goal of the client we're dealing with. And so influence starts to fit really importantly into that. And when we talk influence, we're talking transforming a relationship where we build the key aspects of trust, of personality, of a relationship built on, sometimes on profession, sometimes in my experience and in most librarians' experience, the best questions come from people who become colleagues, friends, associates, more so than generic clients or users. And that requires a lot of influence. It also requires you to stand out. Because if you're not memorable, why are they going to remember to come to you the next time they have an issue or a problem? And how are they going to understand that you might be able to help with that specific problem if they're not thinking, you know, something about engineering standards or the law or whatever? But what is the positioning you want in the back of their brains? Oh, this person's helpful. Sometimes when I talk to them, things become clearer. My questions become better. My goals are more aligned with the information I need to make the decision or engage in the learning I need to do to behave the way I need to behave within my context as opposed to the library context. So I don't think it can be understated that influence positioning is a serious skill, a serious competency. And SLA and a number of associations, SLA, ALA, MLA, AALL, all have competencies documents. I was teaching that this month. And those competencies aren't just about skills, they're also about attitudes. And your attitude towards how you handle influence is to run into it rather than shy away from it. To have the confidence of sharing your expertise while at the same time being approachable enough to engage in an influential setting, an influential framework. And some of us shy away from that because we're uncomfortable saying we're experts. And, you know, frankly, we are. Once you get a master's degree, you're more expert at information than the person who's asking you. They may be experts in their content, but they're probably not experts in the architecture of the information they're dealing with and how to search, retrieve, engage, and make it useful, and engage in it in a knowledgeable or learning fashion. So we need to be influential about positioning ourselves with key users, and that's strategy. Like, you know, who's the key user? And if you're not servicing the real end user, how do you service the hell out of someone who is servicing them? So if the key end user is the decision making in a stock brokerage and you don't serve them, then you better be serving the analysts and the researchers who do serve them exceptionally well. So you got to think about, what's my personal brand? How do I brand myself so that they're thinking about me in the right context? If they think about me in a narrow, stereotypical librarian sense, versus they think about me as a partner, or they think about me as an associate, they think about me as a peer, an equal, a colleague, building your personal brand is essential to the identity you hold in the context of who you work with, your people. And the people you're working with need to feel comfortable. And comfort is earned. It's not something that comes just from human behavior, knowing your name or shaking a hand, although those are certainly the beginning of that stuff. And certainly your job title or what you call your library operations isn't really a brand. It's more of a stereotype, and it's hard to dislodge. So personal branding versus institutional branding changes the dynamics of how you operate as a professional librarian. And a lot of our work in our field is too tied to the branding of our content and spaces, and not enough to the branding of the professional skills of the person who makes the magic happen. So be clear on your uniqueness. What makes you unique? What is the difference between you and Google? And if you can't say that in a couple of sentences or a couple of words, you're in trouble. What is the difference between you as a relationship and a customizer and a localizer and a partner, a solution provider? How does that differ from what your library is? And how do you differ from other people who exist in the information settings in your organization? How do you differ from HR and their coaching activities around training and what you do? How do you differ, and what makes you unique in the IT sense? Are you just about the pipes and the software and stability, or are you about what's in the pipes? So, in that sense, it helps to focus on rapport. And how do you build rapport? Well, you start to work on respect. You get respect when you give respect. You get respect when you listen and reflect back at people that you understand what they're saying, identify with it, and relate. You get respect and you connect. We use the word networking a lot in libraries, but networking is really about connections, and connections are two-directional, multi-directional. They are not Rolodex links, emails, broadcast relationships. Those can be components of how you manage it, but that personal relationship, whether it's virtual or in person, is an important part of building rapport. The higher the level of rapport, the better the service you can provide and the better your influence will be in adjusting the arc of change, of research, of the success of your organization, and the kinds of services you provide. It's actually measurable. When you look at, I have a relationship with the people who do the patents, and I reduced the patent process or the FDA regulation process by 2 weeks with some excellent research. Well, those processes, patents, bringing a drug to market, getting FDA approvals, can cost upwards of $1 million a day. So when you look at your salary and say, if I save 10 days worth of time, my rapport with those users allowed me to identify a new tool, and that rapport delivered a measurable impact. And your network has value. When you look at other professions and say, what makes them influential? Like, do you want to work with a solo lawyer who lives in an office and delivers good and effective service? Or do you want to say, that's the best lawyer in town, and he knows every important other lawyer in the country and he's aware of what's coming down the tax pipe because he's got connections in the government? Well, you've got a similar network within SLA, within California Library Association, within ALA, whatever your network has. Do you mention and subtly introduce that you're using your network and you can call people in other firms that they can't call? You can access resources through your network. You can get, many of us can get brown envelopes full of really cool stuff using open source networking without divulging confidences, without trading trade secrets. But because of our personal relationship, we can get a copy of something that would be difficult to get on their own behalf because we have networks. We can get advice. We can talk to people about what's going on in their industry. This is an important part of personal influence. The influential people are well connected. And they're connected on ideas, and ideas are the currency of influence. So if you want to be influential, you share your ideas. You don't sit on the wall like a wallflower in a meeting. But if you say, I've got an idea that if I just dug into this database, I might be able to find the kinds of things you're looking for. Or I might be able to look that up using social tools or access experts. And your ideas in the information context, in the informing context, in the network context, might be just what's needed to change the culture and arc of a research project and the success of the organization that's hosting you as an information professional. Because sharing an idea has value. And the interesting part about sharing ideas versus sharing physical objects sorry, is if you share a physical object, you don't have it anymore. You might get it returned. If you share an idea, you both still have the idea. And it has a different economic value in that its value is only in the sharing. Its value isn't in the hoarding. Whereas sometimes hoarding physical objects can create wealth. But an information-based profession, a knowledge-based profession, is fundamentally founded on ideas. So when you're looking at personal influence, the more you share, the more you influence. So long as your sharing has intelligence, sensitivity, and the right professional level of content. Because sharing advice has value too, whether it's free or not. You can position yourself as free because you're paid for at the organizational level, but that's not true. So you are an expense to your organization, whether it's your community or your institution or your company, your firm, your professional firm. And so when you're doing personal influence, your value is around your advice rather than your objects. So if you get a bibliography, a couple of great articles, a book, if it just gets delivered as the artifact, the object, then your value is somewhere teeny bit higher than FedEx. If you write something on top of that book and give it context, or if you deliver it in person and say, these are the 3 best articles, here's some challenges I had on this question that you gave me, or this problem you have, and here is some ideas I have if you want me to extend it and move further into it. How important is the question you're working on? Is it just for interest, or is this critical to the success of the project you're working on? But I was able to find this really important information, and I think that this article addresses your problem directly, but these other ones are tangential, and they might not be things that you thought about. And that information advice is different than medical advice, is different than legal advice, but it still has value, and has value in the relationship and the way you influence the activity of the people you're working with. So sharing advice has value. Withholding it deteriorates your value. So if you're sending out articles or you're sending out newsletters and you're expecting those objects to represent you in the absence of a personal relationship, you're in trouble. So, or you are risking being in trouble. So how much personal advice do you put in it? How much context do you put in it? How do you brand it with your name? You know, authoring has value versus just a summary on top. This kind of stuff starts to create the frameworks for you to be seen as a guide on the side, to be seen as a professional who gives advice, to be seen as a member of the team. Your goal is to work extremely hard to build a relationship that positions you as opposed to just that we have a library. Because librarian positioning from any sort of personal basis is infinitely more valuable to you and to the company than it is to just position ourselves with the content. Sharing expertise has value. You're an expert, but your expertise at the table is different than IT expertise or the subject professional expertise of a doctor or a lawyer or an academic area or a vice president of R&D. This is why our organizations are organized around teams, and positioning your influence and expertise on the teams around the table and making sure that you speak up at the appropriate time, whether it's a follow-up to a meeting or during the meeting, and contextualize it, you'll find yourself infinitely more successful and more valued. As a consequence, you'll often be more highly paid, and you're seen as the secret sauce that the company brings when they put people together. So, in personal positioning, there are a number of roles you can play. And this is the Enneagram Institute says there are 9 main roles. Now, you don't have, like, obviously, you're not one of these. You choose a different role every time. You know, as we mature as humans, we learn to experiment with multiple styles and know what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are. But positioning yourself as only being helpful versus being innovative and reforming the way things are positioning yourself as a solo guru or an enthusiast, or challenging ideas and saying, here's some research supporting another point of view. Any one of those might be the appropriate personal positioning on a team. You're more influential when you can express different styles in context, rather than being, we all know the person who's the devil's advocate, as if the devil needs an advocate in today's society. You know, and okay, well, they're always the devil's advocate, and or the person who can always tell you what's wrong with your idea, but doesn't have, you know, desperately confuses criticism with critical thinking, and doesn't pull their critical thinking together by saying, this is what I see as the problem, and here's several potential solutions that we could use to address that. Then you're positioning yourself and being influential by being part of a solution, rather than merely identifying what could go wrong. And bringing your personality to the party also makes you more influential. Knowing every one of these Myers-Briggs profiles, the 16 standard profiles that have been validated to death across innumerable populations, including librarians who probably studied more than anything else. Now, we know that most librarians fall into a very narrow range of those personalities. And some of us, I fall into one of the groups that has a smaller population in it. We know that librarians don't tend to align with normal human populations. 70% of human populations are extroverted, and 30% of normal demographic is introverted. Librarians are the opposite. We're 70% introverted. Now, obviously, introversion doesn't mean shy. That's absolutely not what it means. It just means that as a profession, we're more thoughtful, and we wait to speak. We're stronger listeners, so we've got some great strengths. And when you look at a book like The Introvert Advantage, it shows how you can use that to bring your personality to the party, but also not use it as an excuse to detach or disengage or stand back. And it's valuable to know what your strengths are and what your width of behavior and comfort zone is in terms of being influential. Like, you can be influential by giving a presentation. Most of the great presenters in the world tend to be a little introverted, partly because they invest the time in planning their speaking engagements and plan ahead, and they make excellent presenters. You might be surprised to know that most of the top successful sales reps are introverts, not extroverts. But they can turn on their extroverted side in the sales meeting, but 80% of any sales call is the quiet planning time in advance of it. So when you bring your personality to the party, what is your strength? Are you a good predictor and planner, or are you better at step-by-step planning? Or, like, you know, do you take into account the emotional context of things? This is why we work in teams, because everyone brings a certain value system and ability to the party. So managing your brand equity is managing your social presence in person, and just to remind myself, and your digital social presence. So, what does your dress say about you? Are you aligned with the market you're serving so that they're comfortable? Are you differentiated in some way that makes you memorable? How does your voice work? Is it confident? Is it the right tone at the right time, at the right loudness? You know, I fail at these sometimes. It's just one of those things. What does your office look like? Does it say this is an advisor, your workspace, or does it say clerical secretary? How does your office space position you? Is the norm when you go around the office on the advisory people that you're an equal with or want to be positioned equally with? Do they hang their degrees on the wall or not? How are you aligned with the standards set and the social norms that have happened in your environment? Handshakes It's a little old-fashioned as a measure, but a decent handshake, a look straight in the eye, a lack of deferentiality screams, I'm a peer, I'm equal. And that's important when there may be other issues at stake that you're trying to overcome, including the history of the image of librarians and some of the prejudices. Having active listening skills. I find having conversation pieces in the office lets people open up to me because there's something to talk about. So art. I have a rock with a portrait of me on it, but my head has been replaced by a book that's talking that a friend did for me. It's a conversation piece. And I've already mentioned the introvert advantage because it's a strategic issue in our population of information professionals. However, there are extrovert advantages as well. Oops, I went backwards. So your digital social presence. How well do you manage your LinkedIn profile? There are 108,000 librarians last time I counted them in LinkedIn. It's bigger than any association in the world. It's the #1 tool that recruiters use to identify and recruit librarians. It's how, when you want to be influential, in my work in lobbying for libraries, that's how the press finds me. It's the #1 tool used by reporters and writers right now. If I'm not there, they're not going to find me. So if they want to find someone who has expertise and opinions in a certain area, if I'm not on LinkedIn, I'm not visible. So if you're not there and you've made the choice to be invisible, is that aligned with the way you would do it in your normal workplace? Facebook, same thing. Are you socially connected to your users? Do they have the stuff you put up on your wall? Some people, have personal Facebook accounts and professional Facebook accounts. Some people manage their one Facebook account by only allowing some people to see certain kinds of posts and others to see other. But I know of one friend who is really well connected to all the nanotechnology researchers in the world, better than any of his nanotechnology researchers in his specific institution. And he does it all through Facebook. But because he's constantly posting information of interest to nanotechnologists, he's constantly present with them. And that's the role of social presence. Whether it's physically walking through an office, in today's world, it means showing up on their screens. It also means connecting to a younger, more socially dynamic demographic of new researchers. Twitter, obviously the same thing. On this call, we probably don't have too many people, but if you are considering the public library space, Pinterest is dominated by moms with young children, and women in particular, broadly. Twitter is middle-aged. It started as a middle-aged tool and moved down into the millennials. Tumblr is teens and is the #1 social sites for teens right now. Instagram is late teens, early college. When I put it up on our website where the pooling is of different populations, if there's a certain population you want to be influential in as a market or as a conversation, that's where you're doing your research, those are the places to be. Other things in your digital brand is, what does your email signature look like? I'm amazed at the number of librarians who send me emails that has their first name on it, which is nice and social, they're friends. But if you ever wanted to call them back, there is nothing there to find them. I have to go look it up somewhere else. And it's also the same way they do things in business. Well, if you want to build a relationship, you have to give them the tools to find you. What do your digital photos look like? I have a collection of photos, some of them more professional and, boring. And some of them a little more fun, some in black and white. I keep collections of photos for the appropriate thing because my digital presence on Facebook and LinkedIn and all that sort of stuff, it represents me. Have you done the Google search, the vanity search? Have you trolled yourself? And what does this say about you if someone was trying to recruit you or look for you or saying, oh, I got this person, I wonder what they know. And then what does your publications look like? I'm just in the process now of doing a massive search of everything I've ever published to build a bibliography. It's a bit of an ego search, but I figure it's something I can do. Then remember that influence is about sales, and it's not a dirty word. It's simple, really. You want to influence, that's selling, plain and simple. What are you selling? You're not selling information. What is your differentiator? Librarians aren't in the information business, we're in the informing business. When you're informing somebody, you're giving them information that should change their behavior. It's called transformational librarianship. What action do you want? You want to be more knowledgeable, you want to be more informed, you want to improve the foundations of the decisions they're making, the learning they're doing, the research they're doing. And then what are you selling? What's your key benefit? Time savings? That came out in the SLA alignment survey as the #1 need of our users. And yet the #1 weakness that our users saw in our positioning was that we were too slow. Now, some of that was driven by we were too slow because we waited until it was perfect rather than iterating a response and giving them what we found first and then following up with more and then following up with more. They couldn't read the big package we gave them because we gave them a big package. Whereas if we gave them 3 sets in a timely fashion, that was better. What's the difference in the quality of your research and a Google search or a Bing search or a DuckDuckGo search? Can you define it? And then when you're selling quality, are you communicating why what you delivered was higher quality than what they could have done on their own? Are you selling productivity? Are you cheaper than a $4,000 an hour lawyer? Oh, I think you probably are. So your search productivity, you can probably do something in an hour that somebody else might take 4 hours and fail. The research that Mary Ellen Bates published for Factiva, a couple of different studies, shows that the average executive was spending hours not finding what they needed.
It appears that we may have lost Stephen for a moment. Let's see if he can get back into the session.
Let me take this opportunity to follow up on the fact that we may have had a wrong link go out, but I'm not sure which one it is because the one that Basia sent out this evening is the way I got in. Danelle, where did you see the link that was wrong?
Danelle sent me that link that I just pasted in the chat. So that's, some people may have been using that one.
Where did this one come from? I don't recognize this one.
I think it's the same link, actually.
Well, Danelle says that it was in the original email link, so I'm just passing on that information.
And she's saying now that it asked for a password. I wonder.
Stephen said he got asked for a password when he initially logged in, but then he got in. I don't know whether he tried a second time or not. So that may have been throwing some people off as well. I'm trying to get this copied into a message, but I'm not having, and send that out, but I'm not having a significant amount of success at the moment. So I'm
Basia's is perfect. The one that went out this evening has the right, I got right in with it. No password, no nothing, no complication.
But I'm wondering if it was a collaborate issue then, because this is the link I sent out today.
Oh, that's
and yesterday also.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think it's the one that I sent you initially when I set the thing up, so that seems to be working. I'm not sure.
Okay, good. Okay.
So now we just have to figure out.
Dr. D, the email that you sent out to the class, I think it was yesterday or earlier today, it worked perfectly for me. There were no issues at all.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. I pulled it right off of what I got from Basia. Why don't we have the people, four people introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves.
Yes, he said.
Thank you.
Oh, great. Okay, so I'm back. Sorry, I had to reboot my whole internet. Sorry it took so long. And Bill, you can hear me, right?
Sir, you're fine.
Okay, good. Okay, I don't know where I was. I'm just talking about the importance of positioning what we're really selling. And I don't care who's paying or what they're paying with. They can be paying with cash money, but that's pretty rare in our environment. You're hosted in a situation. They may be 1 or 2 or 3 Kevin Bacon steps of separation from the budget. But they're paying with time, reputation, avoidance of risk. They're paying. And when they're paying, that emotional payment of reputation, avoidance, time is really quite a bit more important than cash money budget, which is a little bit different because the value is different than the cost. And so when you're selling something, you need to be clear about what you're selling in order to have influence. Are you selling time savings, quality, productivity? Are the answers authoritative? Are you selling answers? Answers are quite different than information. And it's quite different to be informing and helping people learn and underpinning decisions. And the real value of what your advice and your influence is, that's around the answer space and stuff like that. So we're looking at a fundamental shift in how we position librarians. Rather than assuming that people know what the value of information is or a book or an article, that they can get the illusion of the best by using something like Google. And so what is the one thing we do wrong too often? What don't we do? We don't ask for the sale. We don't ask to be at the meeting, to be at the table. We don't ask for questions. We sit and wait too often. Now, many of us have gotten better at asking for the sale in management by walking around and seeking better quality questions for what we do and trying not to confuse effort and activity with value and impact. And that's where we want to be influential. Influential is measured by what impact you have and what you're influencing and how strategic and aligned it is with your organization's goals, whether those goals are learning or research or business, or achieving whatever aim those organizations are, whether it's invention or creativity, or important things that help happen in our culture, our government policy, the things that where librarians are hosted because we have an impact. We need to ask for the sale, to be at the table, to influence them as early in the process as possible and at the strategic points where it needs to be. So how do we do that? Well, there's some tactical tips. Salespeople, because we're selling authority, change, we're selling important things. They're paying with budget and time and reputation. So mirroring people's body language, looking at their stance. If their arms are crossed, cross your arms. That negates it. If they're standing up, you're standing up. It's difficult to put yourself in a position of power if you're sitting at a desk while someone stands over you asking a question. Standing up, moving around, looking them in the eye, Mirror their body image and stance. That tactic puts you into a peer situation rather than a supplicant. Introduce others. If you've got a network or you know other people in the company or you're just doing the social thing, introducing others and introducing them as valued colleagues or giving context to something that might be interesting about them positions you as a key networker within your organization and your environment. Build up your internal network so you can make those introductions. Lead the conversation into areas that are good. Don't be annoying about it, but leading the conversation into areas that are strategic, that are beneficial, that talk to impact, that you don't have to lead the conversation by being in charge. Leading the conversation can be as simple as asking a question of what's new in your part of the world. Engage with people and disengage. That's a simple way of saying work the room. Don't just get a deep relationship in the corner with one person you're comfortable with. I often see librarians at conferences sitting at a table with everyone they know. I purposefully go out at least half the time. Like, obviously I like to be with my friends, but at least half the time I go sit at a table of people I have no idea what they are. Sometimes I make new friends. Sometimes I know who I never want to sit with again. But engage and disengage. Share your ideas. Let them be bulletproof. Let people criticize them. Let them ask questions. It's way more easy than small talk for me, and I think it's easy for us. You know, your idea is not a baby, and no one's calling your baby ugly. They're just a discussion point. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. If you show you care by asking questions and in being interested in them, then you're good, and then follow through. Follow through is a really key tactical tip. It's one thing to go to a social event at your organization or a meeting or whatever. It's another thing to say, I really like that comment you made. Here's an article I found. Or I really like that comment you made. Perhaps you should be introduced to this other person who's working on a similar project. That's engaging. And those kinds of activities increase your opportunities for influence, and they also make you more influential. The influence pyramid is, first of all, making a choice to be powerful. Now, I'm not talking the evil kind of power where you go boo-ha in the background. I'm talking about the choice to be powerful in terms of learning, engagement, the powerful social environment that libraries lived in and the social impacts we have around learning, research, community glue, building networks. And then being aware of what's going on and feedback, looking at people, engaging, reflecting what they're doing. And then looking at, well, how can I influence this? What would work on the intranet using SharePoint? What would work on our website? How might I communicate this as a blog or an SDI or an alerting service? And then practice what you preach, doing some research for yourself and networking with people. That's the influencing pyramid. It's to affect the nature, the development, or the condition of, insert what your organization does here, the health of our patients, the quality of our legal advice, the quality of our students and how they arrive in the workplace, the quality of the research we do, the inventions we make, the patents we acquire. Your influence is about what does your organization do and how do you influence it? What do your users care about? What's their passion and how do I support it? It's exciting. It's way more valuable and it positions us better. There's what you can control, which is very narrow. There's what you can influence and what you can't control. I'm a big proponent of, I can't control that. I'm better ignore it. There's a lot of stuff I can't control right now. Some of them are Republican. Sorry, bad joke. But I can't control somebody whose budget is going to close down the Institute of Museum and Library Services. It's not going to happen, so I don't worry I can't control it. But I can influence things. And I can influence people on how they think about librarians. I can influence how we think about ourselves. And I can't control it. but I can influence it by speaking out. And so there are dimensions of influence. There's substantive influence. People who really, really know stuff. My friend Ken Haycock has deep, deep research-based knowledge on a number of activities that I find I need to get better at. Leadership being one of his research areas. My friend Cheryl Stentrum knows a lot about how influence happens, so I listen to her. They have substantive influence on stuff. In the same way in your organization, there's people with substantive influence. They're the best at what they do. Then there's interpersonal influence. That person people listen to. Style-based influence, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I admire Seth Godin's speaking style. I admired Steve Jobs' slideshows. There's people who their style influences me, and I've always wanted to mimic that because I thought that was good. And it could even be, in other things like a fashion sense. When I see somebody going, oh, that guy's really well dressed, I wish I looked like that. And then there's strategic influence. Can you influence the overall strategies of your organization? Doesn't mean you can be only one of these. Sometimes you have all four, sometimes you have three of the four. And knowing where that is, it's clearly understanding what your dimensions are. Clout. People who track, they've got all my social media in their thing because I gave it to them. And they can measure where I fit into each of these. So it tells their analysis, and whether I agree with it or not doesn't really matter. But they rank me highly as a networker, a socializer, sort of the pundit thought leader side of things. I'm not a strong curator. I'm not a dabbler. I don't like to do small talk. And so they can measure the kinds of things that my blog, my social networking activities, my social media activities, my speaking engagements, that sort of stuff. They look at it and measure me. So you sit there and say, look at all these different people I could be in different ways. I don't want to be up in the top right-hand quadrant, the Paris Hilton quadrant there, celebrity. But I like being in the conversations that are around the future of libraries and where we are. And I like to work with people to influence the way we move forward. And part of that is, what are the components of your influence, your personal influence, that guides how you work? Do people trust you? Trust is something that takes years to build and can be lost in minutes. So how do you ensure that you're always trustworthy? And that's got components of ethics and consistency and that kind of stuff in it. What are your relationships? It's really great to be a knowledgeable person, but if you have no relationships, who's going to know? Credibility. There's people who have opinions on stuff, and that's nice, but are they credible opinions? Are they based on research? Are they based on experience? Are they based on their education? What are the components of your credibility? And then how relevant are they to the people you want to influence? And the simple way to increase your influence is to reframe the worry about there's no bad publicity. I don't know if I agree with that, but don't worry that people are talking about you, or that you're the center of attention, or that you're going to be perceived as egomaniacal. There's somewhere in the middle here. There is a nice balance of being confident in your thoughts, while at the same time engaging in a conversation. David Lanke calls conversation theory one of the more important things about librarians, making sure that the conversations happen that will change the world. And then you got to look at how do people gain knowledge? How do they understand what's going on? And this is AIDA, A-I-D-A. First of all, you got to get their attention, and then they got to perceive that they're interested in what you're talking about. Then they have to desire to do something with it, and then they take action. A lot of the time, librarian activities ask for an action without putting in place the 3 steps that lead to an action. So we might shy away from being influential by attracting attention. Oh, I don't want to do that. That would attract attention. That marketing plan is too edgy. That color is too bright, etc. And you got to attract attention. Again, we got that on the Geek the Library campaign, that a lot of librarians hate it because it uses the word geek, and it's not really perfect English, but it attracted attention and it told stories to find out if people were interested and could take it and desire to communicate how libraries had changed their lives. And how do you generate interest? Through conversations, and then allow them to internally process whether they want to take the action. And that the work is on the attention side before you get to the action. And putting more effort into gaining attention is not egomaniacal. It's an important step. Oh, I apologize. It's an important step in ensuring it. So looking at things like your personal branding, the branding of your library, how elegant, professional, visible, whatever it is, that kind of attention-seeking behavior is not a bad thing. It's a good thing in this content. And so now you're looking at the central skills of influence are things like, how do we negotiate research questions? I find negotiating research parameters a much better way than saying reference interview. Reference interview is our jargon, whereas the people we talk to feel it differently. Really recognizing that we're selling ideas and they're paying in many ways. Understanding that our role isn't one-on-one and dyadic, but it's about teamwork, and that we provide leadership in our organizations on informing processes and knowledge in the same way that the CIO provides leadership on IT, the CFO provides leadership on finance. We need to be sure where our leadership space is, and that we get the respect, the trust, and the conversations, the networks to do that. Influence out of context is just a party conversation. Start with the why. Why do I exist in my organization, and what am I going to influence that's important? And what value proposition do I offer? And that value proposition is reflected in some of the work that SLA did about the alignment initiative and surveying thousands of chief executives and asking them where they saw librarians versus libraries. And we wanted to work on, make sure that we were positioned within ourselves to know what we were about, what we were important to, and whether we needed to move the needle on what our hosts, the people who paid for us, thought. But we also wanted to make sure that we had recognition in the marketplace, we were differentiated from competitors, and that we could deal with the membership issues. The good news is, sorry, in comparing it to what librarians thought about themselves versus what our users, our executive users, thought about us, was, isn't it fascinating that they valued us more highly than we positioned ourselves within ourselves? I should repeat that because it's appalling that our marketplace sees more value in us and the impact we have than we're willing to promote. Scary. So we have a promise, a service promise. We have a value, and our value is bigger than the promise we're making. And we need to get a bigger voice. We need to say who we are and what we want in order to be more influential. So the key findings were around the perceptions of value and our role. And we learned a lot about the information roles and habits of our users. So this is the kind of stuff that they thought was important. And you can see that the people who don't use information are very small, which is interesting. And some of the regulatory professions, like, where you're doing a job that requires you just do a standard process, they don't need information as much. They're not going through the change that they might go through eventually. But you see, what I always think when I look at this list, that it looks so much like you could practically put the SLA divisions and some of our publishers and vendors into each of these categories in a group. But the perceptions of value, the red lines here are what librarians think are important, providers, information providers, and the blue is what users think are important. So you sit there and see the line managing a physical library and a print collection. The librarians thought that was really important, and our hosts really don't think it's that important at all. However, they did value making information available on the desktop and competitive intelligence. We value conducting research on our users' behalf way more highly than they did. They saw the productivity impacts. They saw training as important. When you look down this kind of research, we see some interesting disconnects between what our people thought and what we think. And then we looked at where they saw the value in what we did. And some really high value numbers, over 90%, felt that relevancy of the information was number one and timeliness was number two. Ease of use and access, and currency, being really timely, and then easy to do business with. And then it starts to go down, but they don't want to give up much. Format and marketplace visibility and bundling just weren't that high. But when you look at this and say, does my pattern that talks about what I do align with what the executive surveyed felt that would influence them, that they valued? This is good research and not used as effectively as it should be. And then we were asking them question about what's the value of information to their organization. And they felt it was valuable to them to know how to integrate information into their workflow. That was one of the higher ones. Or know where to put it, know where to access it once I signed it, and have a good understanding of what's available. They may value that, but they don't feel they're getting it as strongly as they should. So when we look at things like intranets and our organization and development taxonomies, ontologies, cataloging, indexing, all the things we do, we are using jargon like that instead of these words they were using on how they did it. And so they felt that librarians making resources and information accessible in a timely, convenient, and secure manner was paramount. And then number two was creating a culture of continuous learning and knowledge sharing. That's influence. Knowledge sharing, making informed decisions, credible, customized, contextualized information, not kits, not packages, but added value delivery that informs decisions. And then they had saved time and money. You look at this stuff and you start to see the components of the messaging we need to do in order to have personal influence. And so we found some themes. The big themes were continuous learning and expertise, knowledge navigators and value-added intelligence, and strategic advisors and drivers of growth. Those professional themes talk to how we talk about ourselves versus talking about the objects, the facilities, the artifacts, the books and databases, the intranets, the technologies. The value was driven in knowledge, value-added intelligence, strategy, advice, and driving growth. And when we asked them to work within an interactive editor to deal with stuff, they came up with the buzzwords that would matter to things. And the buzzword portion was important. I think I've got it in here. I hope so. Oh, these are they want to promote versus defend value-driven benefits was the advice on the findings. So what are the value-driven benefits that you would influence that will make a difference in your organization? And it's not defend, like, we see this defense versus promote. Promoting ebooks is different than defending print as a metaphor. So what are the value-driven benefits of what you do? And that knowledge is the bridge between information and action. Organizations exist to take action, make sales, invent things, solve a case, cure a patient. Information sits on shelves and databases. Knowledge, the knowledge professions like librarians, bridge between the two. And we're in a role where we're in an evolution, not a revolution, as things change. And appealing to corporate executives who are making the big decisions is the buzzword, the sweet spot. We found the L word, librarian, library, had strong currency in some sectors and very, very weak currency in others. It was strong with academic leaders, with lawyers, and it was weak in the corporate environment broadly. So we need to build a communications framework for influence where we can understand our key messages as we move the profession through. And this is broadly, it's findable on the SLA website. And I put these slides up on SlideShare and on my blog. They will have been posted by now. I think I timed them to go up at 10 o'clock. I'm in Eastern time zone, by the way. And then we got some SLA stuff. And I just wanted to show information professionals are accountable for gathering, organizing, and sharing the right information for the best decisions. Not putting for the best decisions in there puts us in troubling positions. We further create a culture of knowledge sharing by educating colleagues on the best use of information resources. And then we have a global network that is active, and we promote the exchange of information, innovation, ideas, insights, and trends. These are the challenges our organizations are finding at the executive level. We have bottom line benefits. We save organizations time and money by providing value-added intelligence that's accurate, reliable, and relevant. And we deliver expert information to our organizations in a timely, accessible, and convenient manner. That's our bottom line. And that's what we need to start communicating. That's what we need to influence. And we ensure that our organizations have a competitive advantage by making the best decisions. So, just remember, you are engaging an influence agenda. Selling isn't a dirty word. Politics is not a dirty word, despite what we're seeing in the marketplace now. Internal politics are the currency of relationships, and we need to be playing it well. So, sell yourself. Promise. What are you all about? What is your promise? What is your personal brand promise? What difference are you making? How do people recognize you? What's your identity? Your personal name is a brand, and you build meaning into it. I'm Stephen Abram. Somebody meets me raw off the street who has no knowledge of me at all. I gradually need to build a brand into my name that people say, okay, that's the guy, that, ... It may occasionally be negative. Most of the time, I hope it's reasonably positive. Then what's your contribution? How do you make a difference? How is the world different for you waking up this morning? How is the world different for that transformational interaction I had with you? Or do I perceive that I'm one book or one article or one DVD heavier? How do I get the word out about myself and my services? And how do you ultimately profit? I called it monetization on the slide, but it's not really about money. It's about what is the profit I get for what I'm paying. Is my reputation better as a result of working with you? Are my questions better? Are my decisions better? Are the quality of my judgment and my learning better? We're engaging in a long-term relationship. It's not about each event. It's about the series of events that creates trust, that they understand and invest in your personality and your positioning yourself and not merely your resources, although in the context of your resources. Your resources are a foundation on which you sit, but on any foundation, you can build a house or a home. There's a difference between a house and a home. Think about what the difference between a house and a home is, and then think about when I have books in a library, how is my library different for the presence of me and the team of librarians and professionals and staff that work in it. You're selling your competencies, not just your skills. Your insights and advice, your network and connections, your resources. You're selling you. And you are the more valuable thing. You're the most valuable thing in the library because you're the connection between the resources and your users. You're the flashpoint. You're the magic. So the 4 P's of personal influence is to plug in. Get onto social media, get on your intranet, get into the environments and meetings in your organization that do it. Look at being proactive. Look at being personable, and look at being and ensure that you're doing everything professional without being so professional that you're boring. So stand out in the crowd. And I think I went a few minutes over just because we had the few minutes where my internet got dropped. But I'm happy to take any questions, Bill. If someone wants to ask some questions, I can see the chat box. I'll listen for anybody who might be talking. Oh, I see Bazzy in the window and Bill in the window.
Yeah, so if somebody's got a question, that's fine. You can either raise your hand and we'll call on you, or just take a mic and ask, and we'll have some questions. Go ahead, Basha.
Thank you. So my question, Stephen, thank you very much for the talk. It was fascinating. And as I was listening to you, I was trying to put a sort of a new librarian's cap on and think of how people who are just entering the profession would use your advice. Obviously, there were just fabulous gems that make perfect sense when we listen to you. And so much of what we do here at SLIS, or is concentrate on getting that job, but then you find yourself having the job you wanted. And how do you, right off the block, use these skills or the advice that you have given us and position yourself for influence?
That's a good question.
How do you, it's difficult to figure out office politics, and what would your advice be to start that process, I think?
Okay, there's 3 pieces of advice. One is San Jose State is a leader in this area in that you are given memberships and associations, and it is critical that you use those memberships to network, understand what's on the website, look at the who's and membership directories, go to the meetings, network, don't be shy. Every time you're lined up for a coffee, you can meet somebody. I've made lifelong friends at SLA when I meet people for coffee. And, I've got people who I just respect enormously, like, Bill Fisher. Bill Fisher and I ran against each other when we didn't even know each other for election once, and we're still friends, even though I lost. And it's just part of our profession that you build your network. It's critical in the early stages of your career to not underestimate the power of your network. 2, you mentioned office politics and that sort of stuff. The 2 things of advice I give you is get up off your butt and walk around the office, meet people. Don't take their time, but when you get the chance to talk to somebody, talk to them. I've written a couple of articles on this. I know that some of your professors use it in the courses, But I said, like, we overly emphasize elevator speeches in librarianship about what we're going to do when we have someone trapped in an elevator for a minute and tell them, like, what's new with happening with us. That's all fine, but that's not a process. That's an event. How do you take an elevator speech and turn it into a Starbucks coffee where someone will give you 20 minutes and have a coffee with you? And then how do you listen and be interested in them and learn? Understand the politics of the company. Then next thing is, when you're going to go down, like in Toronto, there's hot dog carts all over the street. Who will go and have lunch with you, a busy lunch for 40 minutes, and have a hot dog on the street and talk, and you build relationships and you get to know people, whether it's a partner or a secretary or a manager in systems. Just start to build relationships and build a wide network within your organization or within your community. Then the next thing is social events and getting good at them. So what are the social events in your office? Whether, never miss a retirement party because it's full of people who are still there. Never miss I went to enough baby showers and stuff, but those are where the real gossip happens. Where, grapevines happen there. They happen at the back door with the smokers, the biggest cross-functional team in most organizations that transcends organizational boundaries. And then the last thing is dinners and lunches where you get a long time and you sit there and seek mentors, seek advice, and say, I just want to talk to you to get insights into the strategy of this organization. And you'd be surprised that everybody up to the CEO will, the worst they can do is say, no, I'm sorry, I don't have time. And they're not meaning to be insulting, and don't take it like that. But the vast majority of the time, people will find time to coach you, especially when you're earlier in your career and you're honest, ethical, giving, and genuinely interested in what they say. And those activities pay off way higher benefits for the 10, 20, 30, 60 minutes. Even if you pay for the coffee, it's as valuable, meeting 10 people over 2 months and scheduling it and being quite strategic about it. And next thing you know, you've got a network where they say hi to you in the hall, they know you as a human being, and you've built a network that, one, it makes your life better. Two, you can use that for influence in the best of intentions to make your organization better and help your users be more successful. So that's my longish answer to your question, Basia.
Thank you.
Great. Do we have any other questions? Again, I know a couple of people said they were having problems with their mics, so if you want to put something into the chat box, that's fine. Stephen can see that as well. Yes, Jenny, go ahead, grab the mic, please.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to say I'm from southwestern Ontario, so I'm very happy and excited to be talking to you. And I guess I have a question about, I'm a branch manager in a county library, and so I'm one of sort of 12 arms of a single entity. And how do you sort of personally promote yourself, do the social network thing, all of that, without potentially stepping on toes of your own organization? For example, we have a Facebook page with our county library, but I find it so slow for them to get my programs and things that I'm doing in my branch that I just sort of put it on my own personal Facebook account, and I'm getting more of a following that way than our actual library. So how do I balance that without, like I said, stepping on toes?
I have, I have absolutely no problem with people having personal pages. I think that the corporate page needs to meet one standard and has one marketing standard. Having a librarian do their own stuff is really quite great. I'll tell you a story. I was in giving a speech at a conference once, and a librarian said to me, Stephen, you told everybody in the audience they had to be on Facebook. I read stories to 3-year-olds. Why the hell should I be on Facebook? And I said, well, maybe they don't. Are your 3-year-olds driving themselves to the library now? And she looked at me, and in our profession, pretty smart, and said, oh. And so she sent me a note about 4 weeks later, and it was basically a damn you note. I started asking all the moms in my story hours to friend me on Facebook. Now I've had to double the number of story hours because they're all having conversations on my Facebook page about the story, about parenting, about the child health encyclopedia I mentioned. And so they, like, the idea that an institutional Facebook page for the library could engage and influence a community versus an individual is sort of like just not realistic. And when you're focused like that, we look at the new roles we're creating around community librarians and trying to understand our community. And if you're focused on certain target demographics, whether it's teens or certain ethnic groups that are underserved or new Canadians or moms and tots, it should be done on the personal level and positioned personally. Of course, that doesn't mean that the facts and the information doesn't go on a central page so that there's a place for people to go. But when they choose to engage and you want to influence the success of your library, that's done on a much more personal level. People do not friend institutions. They friend people. And that's where they want the relationship, and that's where they're going to find the value, especially in a county library system where you're engaging with communities that hold neighborhood or small town values around how they want to connect with their neighbors. And the library potentially being worried about an individual presence in a community that's basically about individuals would be misguided. I don't know if that makes any sense in terms of your question.
Any other questions from anyone?
Yes, the pest that I am, I do have a question again. And it relates to the Stephen's advice, and I have to say that I completely agree with it, but I think that I perceive a conflict. When I started, Stephen is talking about putting value on the information that we are sharing, so not making it just about the information, but also inserting our expertise, and in a way evaluating the information before we give it out. And that is something that's kind of interesting to me because I recently took a 210 reference class, and of course in that class, just as when I first started working in the library, we were repeatedly told that our job is to try and keep our personal opinions or even things that we know, essentially to refrain from evaluating or from passing on any kind of values that we might have along with the information we are giving to our patrons or to our library users. So I'm wondering if that is one of the reasons why librarians are having such a hard time inserting their expertise and knowledge and the special sauce that they bring, they could potentially bring to their institutions into that process.
Well, I would fundamentally disagree with that teaching. Now, it could be, like, I think there's no rule a librarian can't over-implement. So when you pass a law that says we have to filter things, next thing you know, we're filtering things over-filtering. And when you, like, I agree that we have to be very careful to keep our personal opinions out of it, but to go too far the other way around, like, we need to remain non-partisan, but we still are biased. We're biased towards quality. We're biased towards alignment with the user needs. And positioning our advice in the context of that user needs this, then there's nothing wrong with that. To neutralize it so far that we create a beyond vanilla, tasteless product and relationship is just racing towards irrelevance instead of the other way. And if we want to remain relevant, yes, you have to be nonpartisan, and in most contexts that's absolutely important. Yes, you can't be prejudiced against any group, gender, that sort of stuff, because that's just dead wrong. But we have professional biases that are essential to the work we do. And putting those professional biases in place, saying, well, I just wanted to tell you that this one comes from a scholarly journal that's excellent, and even though this piece of information is from a blog, it happens to be from a blog of one of the most respected commenters in the field of your research, and it seems to be in advance of something. That contextualization is important information for the person you're giving it to that may be new to them. So I think if we over-implement the neutrality, we're doing ourselves and, more importantly, our users an extreme disservice. And it's important that we really work hard to understand what our users' needs are and then position our advice in their context, and not push them into the deep end of the information pool and say, okay, here's the information. And anyone, they say, well, we have unbiased collections. It's just bull. Our collections aren't unbiased, and as a matter of fact, there's a lot of research showing they're extremely biased. And that's so we can't just be delusional about this. And if we want to be professionals, it'd be like saying, I want my doctor to just not pick the best treatment for me. Well, other professionals get to pick the best stuff and tell you why it's best, and say, like when my doctor was curing me of cancer, he said, listen, I am the best in the world at what I do. And he said that out loud. And I thought, oh my God, what a strong ego he got. But, this guy's going to cut open the full length of my back and pull cancer out of my spine. I'm glad that he's confident, and I'm glad that he's an expert in what he's doing. When I'm getting advice on research, today I asked a research question of a good friend who's also a librarian, and she's doing some research for me, and I trust that it will be excellent because I trust her and her advice. And I asked her advice on a number of issues, and I took it for how the delivery is going to be on my report. And I got advice, and it was professional advice, and it was advice that was experienced in an academic bibliography I'm creating, that I am not an academic bibliography, she is. And she's putting it together for me in the right way, and she's giving me quality control and deduping and stuff where she's making decisions on my behalf that are very important to me, but she contextualized everything she was doing. And I just think, yes, there's a fine line, but professionals have judgment, and we need to make our judgment transparent to our users by talking about it. I'm getting a little late at night, so I don't know how clear I was on that. But if you go too far the other way, it's not good for you, it's not good for your user. I don't know why it would be good.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. Any other questions or comments? Because it is a little late now, and we do want to try to wrap this up.
I just wanted to say thank you, Stephen, for such an illuminating talk. I'm writing notes to myself on things to use at work, and there's a lot of it. And I'm glad we have a recording of you, because I'm sure it's going to get watched quite a bit. So thank you.
Good.
And good night.
Well, edit out thank you very much. Edit out all that me rebooting my network.
Yeah, we actually.
I'll just remind everybody.
We turned it off for a while.
Good. I'll remind everybody that stevenslighthouse.com has these slides, so anything I flipped over that had a lot of words on it, you can look at it later. And it's on my blog and on SlideShare. And thank you very much. I've enjoyed talking to everybody.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Good luck.
Thank you and good
Bye-bye.
night.